Okay, so today we're going to be doing a really short video, and I know I always say really short video. That's something. No. Um, a really short video showing you guys the power of the gradient map. That terminology, gradient map. What is a gradient map? So gradient obviously is some type of variation of either hue or value from light to dark, or hue from one color to another color. And a map is something, obviously, that it's a guide, right? You put it over something, or you put it on something and you read it. And in this case, a gradient map goes over your existing illustration and it changes the colors, and depending on how many colors you specify. So we're going to give you an example. So in Photoshop, that's where we're working today, I've got an existing illustration that I did for XP Pen a while back for one of their symposiums. I think it was for Lightbox. And this particular illustration, I went ahead and did some initial gradient maps. You can see in the background those green hues, purple hues, that, and even the lower left-hand side, the right-hand side, that really exemplify that warm to cool color gamut. So we're going to go ahead down here in the layers palette. You're going to see this little icon right here that looks like a half moon with an arrow. You're going to click it once, and it's going to give you a whole slew of different variables here. But we're going to go ahead and go down to Gradient Map, and we're going to click on the Gradient Map. So by default, I believe it goes either to the last one that you've used, or it goes to a black and white. So here we are. Here's the properties of the Gradient Map. You can see it kind of levels everything from, it doesn't get rid of your color. See, the color is still there, but I've got a transparency gradient map on top of everything, that now all the darks will be black and all the lights will be white. So this is a really quick way for you guys to see if your values on your illustration are working. So we'll go ahead and click this. So the graphic editor, the gradient editor, is a very powerful tool. I'm going to go ahead and expand this a little bit. So how did I get here? So let's go back, because I think that sometimes we move a little bit too quickly. Okay, so here we are in the illustration. I want to put a gradient map over my illustration. I go down, here's the layers palette. I go on the right-hand side, I click on this little half moon icon, and it gives me a lot of variables. And I'm going to go down to the bottom, which is gradient map, and it pulls up the gradient map on its own singular layer. Now, I'm going to go ahead in the properties palette. Now, if this isn't showing up, I like to have my properties showing all the time because, you know, properties. You can go ahead to the window and you can click on this little window right here. So if it's not showing up and you're like, where's the properties? What are you talking about, G? So let's go down to properties, and then it pulls up, of course, the gradient properties. Now, depending on what I'm doing at that particular time, if I switch layers, obviously the properties are going to change. So the properties change depending on what layer you're on and on the tool you are on. So if you watch, like if I were to go to like the measurement tool, where's the measurement? The ruler tool? That's not the properties. Okay, so the the tab on the top will change depending on the tool you're using, and then the properties are attached to the layers. So see how that changes? The color and so on and so forth. So if you want to change the color, what I'm trying to get to, there's a lot of explaining. What I'm trying to get to is the color mapping. So right now I've got the mapping to the darkest colors going to be black and the lightest of colors are going to be white. So let's say I want to change that. Let's say that I want it to be, maybe the cave is kind of purpley, you know, kind of purpley, and everything else, like the fire, is going to be yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one of the colors, and I'm going to double click on the color on the bottom, and I'm going to go to a purple hue. My computer will agree with me. So you need to watch how dark, because what it's doing is it's all the dark colors from, let's say, right here all the way down. So that's a wide gamut of colors right there. And all of the colors from the middle hue all the way up are going to be white. So let's choose a darker. Okay, and then we're going to click on that particular square, and we're going to change that to a yellow hue. Okay, warm, a little bit warmer. Hit OK. So you see what it did? It basically covers the entire color gamut in terms of value. So the value, the darkest of darks are going to be this purple color. The lightest of lights are going to be this yellow color. So if I want to go ahead and add a third color, what I'll do is I'll select on this color right here. See how that little pyramid triangle turns a color? I'm going to hit Option, and I'm going to drag over. Okay, and I need to watch it because now what I did essentially was to copy this color value, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little bit darker yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this down more of a neutral. Hit OK. Okay, so now what that's going to do is I'm going to specify that color transition. And if I like the way this looks, I can go ahead and leave it, hit OK, and move forward. Now, if you look, I can change the location of where that mid value is. Right? If I want the darks to be pushed back a little bit, and I can have them lighten up a little bit, then I can push this value down. Or if I want the darks to be stronger, I can pull that up a little bit. Pull that down a little bit. Cancel. Now, what's great about Photoshop is it essentially gives you a lot of information. Sometimes that's information overload. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't need all this information. There's too many windows. There's too many color variations. There's too many options. But if you stick, okay, and I'm going to encourage you, if you stick to those essential elements that are good for your workflow, what you will end up doing is you'll expand your knowledge of Photoshop as you move forward. I've met many artists in my lifetime that do things that are very convoluted, and there's a simpler way to do it. And then I've realized I do things in Photoshop that are very convoluted and difficult, and it takes time. You know, that's one of the things that I always reference when referencing art and illustration as a professional is your time variable. Time is money. You know, you've heard that how many times in your life? And it completely is true whenever you're working in this environment, especially if you're dealing with money. Now, if I'm doing this for fun, I'll take all the time in the world, right? But the time still is important because time away from your family, time sitting here at the desk, time, you know, not getting out into the world, time not experiencing the world. So I want to have a good balance of time. Time that has a return and time that's spent that I'm not wasting. So, that being said, Photoshop gives you a lot of gradients here that you can utilize. I'm not going to, you know, it's one of those things if you want to see your illustration in a blue hue, you know, to see what it would look like possibly at night. So, maybe I want to go here, or I want to go here, and I can click on these different pre-done elements to help guide me if I don't want to mess around with the manual. Okay? Some of them are kind of, what? You know, okay, so let's go to purples. So, again, gradient maps are really cool for a lot of cool different things. Okay, I think I liked that one. Hit OK. So now what I can do, okay, I can use my eraser. I can use my eraser to help bring some of those values back. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this eraser, soft round. Let's make sure it's pressure. It is. Flow. Let's see, I can go ahead and just start messing around and pulling in some of these more saturated values. I want this right here to be really fun. And see what that's going to do is it's going to give me control over the saturation and see how I can really create a mood very quickly, even if I'm just testing, right? I'm just testing things out. Okay. Just a little bit. And with the modern tablets, with these pressure-sensitive capabilities, over 8,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, you can really get nuance. Nuance is one of those things that you know, is a word that can really exemplify the mood in the illustration, right? So you can see he's in a completely foreign environment. You know, and you can go in, and I'm just being real loose, and I'm going to go ahead and erase a little bit out of this right here. Okay. A little bit over here, a little bit more saturation, right? You can see how this is coming about. It really can create a fantastic mood very quickly. If you want some of those periphery items, the peripheral items being along the sides, to really not draw your attention, you want the color, you know, to be on him, and he's being stalked by the creature in the background. Right? It's that what the gradient map allows you to do is it gives you the freedom to really push and pull some of those color, you know, those color stories that you're trying to tell whenever you work on something like this. You can direct their eye. And just little by little, I'm pushing and pulling those color, you know, those colors. And it gives you just a nice overall feeling. And what's nice is, if you decide and you're like, that purple's really not dark enough. All you got to do is you bring up your properties, you click on that gradient variable right there, that gradient bar, then you click on this, and then you click on the color on the bottom, and you can darken that color. Hit OK, hit OK. And then if the client's like, I'm not really sure I like what you're doing, and instead of going back and having to go in and manipulate the original image, you can basically turn off that gradient map and say, okay, there you go. So, you know, just to give you another example, I'm going to go ahead and close this, don't save, and here is Beans again. So we're going to go ahead and click on that gradient map on the bottom. Here's the layers palette. Click on the gradient map icon. It's not a gradient map icon, it's just an icon at the bottom. We're going to go ahead and click that. Again, it defaults to that black and white. So you can see how the values are in your piece, right? Where your light source is, how you need to beef things up, because viewing things in black and white will help determine whether or not your piece is working aesthetically and if there's a balance in the piece. If a piece is too dark, if a piece is too light, you know, I think there, you know, different methodologies of how people color and how people draw and how people see. A lot of times they'll do what's called a value study, value being light and dark, and if it works value speaking, then you just place the color in after the fact. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on this. Let's go ahead and let's use one of their neutrals. No, that's not a map. Let's do the blues. Okay. Hit OK. Again, the darkest of darks are going to be this color, which I think is a little light, so let's go ahead and change that a little bit. Good. And the lightest of lights, still just a little bit too light, because this is supposed to be a lot lighter. So maybe it's in the morning, possibly. Hit OK. And what's nice is you can change the layer transparency. So if you want to change the layer transparency, you can go through and mess around with the layer transparencies. That's an interesting. Let's hit normal. And I can go back with my eraser, you see. And I can just start pushing and pulling some of these values, some of these colors, erasing. And it gives it such a cool feeling, you know, like it's the morning. Or maybe it's right before the sun comes up. And I'm basically playing with how that cool light is affecting my character. You know, maybe I just want a little hint of light right here. And I'm using the eraser. I'm not painting right now. And I'm erasing out. See, my original drawing is still there. But what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm just barely messing around with some of these colors. Use a little bit on right here. Just a little bit. A hint. Maybe this one's just barely coming through. Just a hint of light on here. A little bit too much. Just a hint of light. Right. And then we come here. I don't really want to get in there and have a nice bright highlight. And then if you even want to go further and you want to and you like where things are going, and you're like, I need to give it just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. See, your eyes are going to go to the area of maximum contrast, always. Either maximum contrast or that area that is a shape, possibly. Maybe it's a black shape, maybe it's a negative space. Your eye's always going to go towards that. So it's your job as an illustrator, artist, storyteller to really say, I want my viewer's eyes to go here. And in this case, I want it to go to his face. I want it to go what he's holding. Right? And I'm thinking how that cool light is affecting, because now I have a dichotomy. I have cool light and then I have warm light. So I'm erasing the warm light, because if I remove that gradient map, everything's warm and saturated. So now I can go in and give it a little bit more mood. Right? And if you want to push things a little bit further, you can create an extra layer. Now I can turn that over to overlay. I can grab a warm hue. And now I'm painting with light. Okay. Now I can go in, so I'm going to turn that taper off, and I'm painting with the warm light. And I can warm things up as much as I want. And what that's doing essentially is overlay. You're taking that color as a layer transparency and you're putting it on top of another color, and it's going to affect that color. Not so much color-wise, it's going to be pulling the light through. So again, look at that. It gives you such a warm feeling here. Here you go. Pulling it through. And it's on top of everything, including my layer mask. I'm sorry, my layer mask, including my gradient map. So I'm warming up these areas. And if I want to cool things down somewhat, look, I can change all of it. And I haven't affected my drawing at all. My drawing is still there. It's still super saturated. I didn't have to do anything. And I can basically change the mood of the piece. And that's gradient maps in a nutshell. You can use gradient maps for so many different applications, changing mood, backgrounds. You can simplify things if you have a piece that has 1,000 colors in it and you really need it to be just 2 colors. Boom, gradient map. You need it to be 3 colors. Boom, gradient map. So, that is the video for today. Hopefully you guys got something. Like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. And as always, go out and draw something. If you've been in the studio, if you've been inside, if you can't stand it anymore, go outside and sit in the sun and enjoy the leaves blowing. It is fall, by the way. So, thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.